Mr. Vokivskyi, given your extensive experience in international security, what do you believe are the most pressing security challenges facing Ukraine today, and how should the international community respond to them?
First of all, I'll try to remind their latest meeting that the Ukrainian president visited the United States of America, to speak for General Assembly United Nations last week. First of all, it was the first ever longest Ukrainian president visit abroad ever, like almost 6 days. And we do understand the main topic with Ukrainian president, tried, to show the world leaders that we need to have a moving, for the peace as soon as possible. And of course, their main goal and main issue, was the biggest challenge in my opinion, for example, to show for international community, for world leaders, and for example, for United States of America, it's reason and improvement, to use the long distance South missiles, on the Russian territory. We do know there from some zones, we got approval from the British side improvement that we can use these missiles, on the Russian territory. But we didn't get, official answer and official confirmation from American side, from the White House administration. And for us, it's important, for the reason, to move in closer, and we do understand it will be help us, especially, for their movements, to as soon as possible, to sit and to talk with Russia for some opportunities, to end of this war. And for example, during the latest meeting between the Prime Minister of United Kingdom and Keir Starmer, and during his visit to Washington, when he talked with Joe Biden, it wasn't any official improvement about this particular topic. And from the sources of World Washington Post in the, for example, Financial Times, it was the biggest challenge during this particular General Assembly, the United Nations, to deliver this this movement and this particular issue. If we're talking about the peace, if we're talking about the structure of the how to implement their main topics and main ideas, which actually was declared and the Geneva Peace Summit in latest June this year. And we do appreciate for the more than 19 countries, to approve the declaration regarding the particular issue in the global food security, global energy security, which is also important. And some are humanitarian issues and social issues about the returning the Ukrainian hostages and their and whatever. And this particular challenges was involved for the Ukraine, and we do understand for some reasons why United States don't give a chance, for the main task and main goal to be implemented because of the upcoming presidential election in the 5th of November in United States. But anyway, we're moving forward, and it still have the biggest challenges for us. But in my personal opinion, it was a very good and fruitful meeting and fruitful visit of Ukrainian president to United States. And there, first of all, that he already give this solutions for the world leaders to understand the Ukrainian peace formula. We will see what be the next, but challenges it still exist.
How has Ukrainians approached to the national security involved in response to the ongoing conflict with Russia? What a new strategy or partnerships have emerged?
If we're talking about their new partnership, a new strategy of the Ukraine and our ally, we do appreciate of Italian presidency of G7 and Prime Minister Meloni about their latest summit with Borgo Egnazia in June this year. We do agree with many particular moments on this final declaration of G7 in Bari. and it's actually based on the security goals and security guarantees of the future. Latest results of was this G7 guarantees was the first appear in the NATO summit in Vilnius last July 2023. And for this particular moment, I do following the greatest connections between the Ukrainian G7 countries. If we're talking about the partnership, to stop the Russia, we need to understand the future of the Ukrainian, particular in the NATO agenda. It's also very important. And actually, the Ukrainian already established their parliamentary task and parliamentary work in the Ukrainian the NATO group. From these reasons, we do know if collective security is in NATO countries as a guarantees of G7, it will be our approach for the next. And I'm convinced that we fully understand this collaboration and cooperation. I cannot mention about the positive results of the Ukrainian and G20 countries, but we do work with Global South. We do work with the more international countries, but in G20 in particular, it's some countries which we are not so appreciated on, and including the Russia. It's why, for this particular reason, on this level of connections and the cooperation, we will have such biggest challenges, on the future. But we will see what will be the next, in particular G20 summit, for example. It also will be the key challenge. For example, to receive the final declaration with the mention of the Ukrainian war, the Ukrainian-Russian war as an issue. The November is coming, and Italy as well as a G20 member, and we do understand this some sort of advocacy will be the following of the next events. And for example, in my opinion, it's something which was established and created in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs meeting in Capri in Italy in latest April can be the following of the latest G7 Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which will be the schedule in the end of November in Italy. For this particular reason, first goal, the first idea, it's a Ukrainian future and Ukrainian NATO future cooperation, Ukrainian G7, which is already done, and we will see what will be the next between the Ukrainian G20. It's still a challenge. We do understand that, but our diplomacy working on that topic, in particular topic. We do not know that the Ukrainian Minister of Foreign Affairs was changed. We have the new Minister of Foreign Affairs. For this particular reason, we will see how his involvement, how his work will help Ukraine of this future cooperations.
What role do you see for Ukraine in shaping the security architecture of the Eastern Europe, especially in terms of NATO relation?
We just received the great news. I mean, like this is already yesterday the new official new General Secretary of NATO was appointed, the former Prime Minister of Netherlands, Martin Rutte. And from this particular moment, we need to understand this cooperation can be changed with some way of the new Office of General Secretary. We do appreciate Jens Stoltenberg for his really good work in the last year of the NATO, of the Eastern Partnership, of this particular help and support since their full invasion 24th of February. And maybe something's going to change of this particular and the future cooperation between all of these allies. But we do know that the next summit of the NATO, it's already scheduled in Gaag in Netherlands. It will be great moment and great chance for the former Prime Minister and the current General Secretary of NATO to show his value of his own strategy against the Russian machine, the Russian aggression, and also the following their of mentioned the NATO open doors policy, because we never can say that the NATO following the open door policy, for example, for Ukraine, but before this door was totally closed. We do know that the following this, in this particular, the cooperation, Ukrainian NATO, Ukrainian Eastern Partnership, which we are going to be moving very closer to the Euro integration, especially which we change the laws, we establish and we preparing the particular papers in the level of the Ukrainian parliament and the Ukrainian government. This also work a lot for the future of the implementation of the idea of European Union. We do going on the same way as the Ukraine with Moldova, the country which can be also the new member of European Union. From this ways, the diplomacy in working very high level, very good role, and I do believe so. It will be some new era of the NATO under the presidency of new General Secretary Martin Rutte. We will see in the next upcoming weeks what in particular will be uploaded on the agenda, but on the upcoming G20 summit, the new role and a new General Secretary will be invited, to represent his collective security organization.
How can Ukraine enhance its intelligence and cybersecurity capability to better counter the hybrid warfare tactics employed in this conflict?
On the level of cybersecurity of this new era in artificial intelligence war, we following our good experience and received a very good experience from our allies, including the European Union countries, NATO, and of course the United States of America. If, for example, we try to mention some key issue of this war on the level of cyber war, we are using a specific under the Ministry of Internal Affairs. We are using the drones, and we do know that war of the drones right now. It's the front of these drones. It's the Ukrainian territory, and we know how it's challenging, how it's changed every single and the renewed every single month, because we can see the results, and we see that not so the soldiers on the army just to fighting on the front lines. Right now, it's a hybrid war. Or now it's a war of the drones, especially on the territory which is temporarily occupied by the Russia on their particular Donetsk region, and Zaporizhia, of course, and some in Kharkiv, and to do receiving the more experience on that, we need to work on the intelligence services around in the foreign countries. We're working on this task. We do know there are Ramstein meetings and all the time in Germany with the NATO commanders and chief commanders. Under the Ministry of MOD, Ministry of Defense, we're working on that. Under the Secret Service of Ukraine, we do have the specific department which is actually working on our allies. If you're talking about the Ministry of Digital Transformation, it's also the key issue or how to work with work of the drones. But we do know that some countries which supply the drones, for example, they following the latest information and the latest updates from the Ukrainian front lines. In this particular, we do work with many foreign countries, and as I mentioned, under the three biggest ministries in Ukraine, is Ministry of Interior Affairs, MOD, Ministry of Defense, and the ministry under the Ministry of Digital Transformation. From this particular work, it's still going. We do know there as we receiving the updates on artificial intelligence as well, and we do know how it's fast growing, how it's fast moving, but we do know we need to find again that we do understand how Russian they have how level of the hackers, high level of cybersecurity involved on the war and in the conflict from the Russian side. They very high level and very high level educated. It's true. We totally this understand, but we're not losing on this particular as well, because we have our ally and partners, which they help us a lot, and we do appreciate it on that. Of course, it's not so much information where you can receive it, from the sources from the news media, because it's under the level of top secrecy, but I hope it's doing on very, very high level.
Today, on the Day of the Defenders of Ukraine, do you see these holidays' significance affecting the nation by uniting it and strengthening the resolves of Ukrainians facing safety challenges?
About this particular day, and after the revolution of dignity 2013, when it's actually the war is beginning, the Russia conquer and occupied Crimea under the presidency of Poroshenko. It was a main idea to establish this particular day to show the appreciation of Ukrainian warriors and defenders. And until the last year, we celebrate this day on the 14th of October, but after move to the Gregorian calendar, from the East Orthodox, we move in and we do celebrate it this day in the 1st of October. It's very important because it's united people. Before we used to celebrate from Soviet Union time on the same day when it was for many years before the Ukraine received independence, 24th of August 1991. And this Soviet Union decommunization, it's the new era. It's totally changed after the former Ukrainian president Yanukovych escaped the country and the revolution of dignity was finished. And we do know the importance and the insignificant roles of Ukrainian defenders. And it's not just particularly one day where we follow in when we united, to celebrate the victory of our defendants, to glory of them. We do appreciate of the Ukrainian army every single day, but this particular day, we do our defendants and defenders, we do support them. And I think that's just this new era just beginning, and we need to to follow in that. And of course we need to forget from all the time this not so good Soviet Union history, and celebrate this with the glory of independence Ukraine, which was actually did. It's not the same as Russia. They still celebrate all of this particularly military and dates, which was since the Soviet Union. It's nothing changed there. We changed their idea, we changed this mentality, and we still fighting about their biggest aggressor in the 24th century, it's Russia, and we're doing pretty good job. And thank you for our allies and partners to support us. And we do have the glory in our heart. And we do appreciate of Ukrainian defenders, and even this particular day united us, united every single people in Ukraine, and we will won this war shortly, and we still fighting, to do so.
Mr. Sampson, how long have you been in Ukraine?
So right now I've been here approximately 1 month. I just returned to Ukraine 1 month ago. Before that, I was in the United States for 6 months doing advocacy and talking about Ukraine and helping to increase support for Ukraine. And then prior to that, I spent 635 days in Ukraine.
About your tour in the USA to promote friendship with Ukraine and to discuss the current situation, have you found difficult to explain what is happening here in Europe?
A little bit. Some aspects of it, yes, can be a little bit difficult to explain, especially to the American people, the voters, and also the lawmakers. So many of them do not fully understand what is going on here in Ukraine, or why it is so important that we, as Americans and other nations, help Ukraine and support Ukraine during this conflict.
Where did you go in the USA? Which states did you visit for these meetings?
So I traveled in the United States a lot during the 6 months. I drove over 32,000 kilometers while I was in the United States. That's just over 20,000 miles during those 6 months. I started in Texas and I went to both coasts multiple times. But the primary focus was my time in Washington, D.C. at our nation's capital, talking to representatives and offices of U.S. Congress. They're the ones that decide. They're very instrumental in deciding whether or not we support other nations. And we knew that there is an aid package that has been discussed for many months. And I got to go there for the Ukraine Action Summit with the American Coalition for Ukraine and be one of their speakers on, just being a subject matter experts on what's going on at the front lines and the importance of continuing and increasing support. And part of what I urged Congress was to put this bill on the floor for a vote, knowing that it will most likely pass. And thankfully, they actually did that. And just a few days later, they put the bill on the floor, voted on it, and passed it later that same weekend. So I'm very proud to say that I got to be a small part of 60 billion worth of aid for Ukraine, and that aid package also, there's multiple aid packages there that also helped Israel and other areas around the world as well.
With only about 10% of people holding a passport, meaning it can be difficult for them to grasp what's happening on the other side of the world. So, have you encountered challenges in interacting with people in the Midwest or other areas of the United States?
So first, I'll go back and touch on something that you just said that during my travels in the United States, I got to visit and drive through and spend a little bit of time in a large amount of different states in the US. I flew into Texas. From there, I did multiple events in Texas. From there, I was able to go up to Kansas and Missouri. Then I went out to California, Idaho, Arizona, New Mexico, Arkansas. I already said Washington, D.C. So quite a few different areas and many different small stops in between some of these to talk about my experiences. And sometimes it was short conversations, and sometimes it was much longer conversations. And overall, just your average American just uh, doesn't really understand what's going on over here or why so much help is needed. And then part of that is just the differences in culture and financial abilities. When the US military goes somewhere to go do something, they have the full support of the US government, and the US government's able to financially field everything that's necessary for military operations. And that includes when we're going places to help protect people and safely deliver humanitarian aid uh, items. And that is something that we are lacking here in Ukraine because we do have the full support of the Ukrainian government, but financially, they're just not able to fully field everything that the military needs to be able to uh, uh, do extremely well at the front lines for some of the areas. And that also directly affects the amount of humanitarian aid that can be safely delivered to areas that are in great need near the front lines. So that's something that I was able to explain to the American people, and some of them had a very tough time just understanding, having such, Ukraine being such a large country, but having just the financial problems of not being able to provide um, the financial abilities that the military and humanitarian organizations need to be able to fully function and do their jobs.
What motivates you to help Ukraine in this crisis?
I've always had a passion to help and to serve others. That's what led for me to join the United States military back when I was younger, about 20 years ago. So I joined the United States Marine Corps back in 2005, and I was active duty until 2010. And that's because just with my passion to help and serve others, I felt that being in the military would be a really good area to do that in and to help protect people when sometimes they're not able to protect themselves. And I got to be able to do that doing combat missions both in Iraq and Afghanistan. Then after that, I spent a couple thousand days back in Iraq doing security for the United States Embassy and consulates. in Iraq over the course of about 9 years. I did 15 deployments doing that. And that was with a similar passion of just, helping protect people that just are trying to do their jobs and that are trying to help, a nation that needs assistance. And here, the same passion, except for here, I know the evil that Russia is known for doing when they go and invade other countries. I was taught about that as a young person in the United States. And when I went to Afghanistan, I was actually able to interact with Afghani locals that were able to show me and some of my other Marines the evidence of some of the things that the Red Army did while they had their invasion in Afghanistan during the Cold War. So that was something that spoke very loudly to me, that when this invasion happened about 2.5 years ago in 2022, that I felt that it was just my duty with my skills and experience and my passions to come over here and do everything I can to help protect the Ukrainian people.
From your point of view in the field, what is the current situation at the front line? What do you think about the support that European countries are providing in the field? It's enough, or does Ukraine need more support?
So the specific situation varies on depending on which areas of the front line. I've been able to go to different areas of the front line from the regions of Zaporizhia, Mykolaiv, Donetsk, primarily in Bakhmut, and also Kharkiv. So I've been to a lot of different areas, and some need more resources, and some already had a decent amount of resources. But I would say that overall, weapons, equipment, and ammunition is desperately needed at the front lines. And that is, these supplies are being given in large numbers by the United States and other countries. However, unfortunately, it's just not enough. We need a lot more at the front lines to be able to be effective. Less than a year ago, I was at an area in the front lines in the Zaporizhia area that was very quiet because both sides had almost no ammo. So both the Ukrainian side and the Russian side were extremely low on ammunition, both for small arms like rifles and for larger pieces like artillery and mortars and stuff like that. That both sides had only enough ammo to defend themselves, but not to go and attack the other side. So that was one of the examples I shared with Congress about whoever gets ammunition first will have the ability to attack the very next day. So that was one of the examples of the dire need that we get the ammunition to the Ukrainian side before the Russians can resupply their side. First, I'll say that we are very grateful, and especially myself, very, very grateful for all the aid that we're getting from all the nations that are providing aid, and not just aid that reaches us to the front lines, but also aid that helps out, bigger cities with electricity and stuff like that. So, very grateful for that, and these aid packages are working. For example, some of the American aid packages, get American weapons into Ukraine, and then some of those American weapons are weapons that I'm able to use at the front lines as an American that has been trained for many, many years on some of these weapon systems. But we definitely need a lot more. The support that Ukraine is getting is very, very little compared to the needs that Ukraine needs to be able to be successful on the front line and to better preserve life on the front lines for the Ukrainian people and all the other foreigners that are out there helping out. And that is something that provides security for Ukraine and Europe. We know that Russia has been very open about once they are done conquering Ukraine, that they're going to invade Poland next, which drags NATO directly into direct conflict with Russia. And that's a big problem that we're all trying to avoid is Europe, the entirety of Europe going to war again. Europe has seen that already a couple times. Thankfully, America has not really seen that, especially as you said, people within the central areas of America, some of them have no idea that we were actually attacked by the Nazis on one coast and the Japanese on the other coast during, the 1940s. But Europe has already seen a huge amount of war, and that's something that we're really fighting to try to prevent. So we definitely need a lot more support from, the Western nations and these other NATO countries and everyone that's doing everything to help out Ukraine. We need a lot more of it.
Today, on the Day of the Defenders of Ukraine, do you see these holidays' significance affecting the nation by uniting it and strengthening the resolve of Ukrainians facing safety challenges?
For me, this is definitely a very special day, and I appreciate that you bringing it up. That this is something that, even though I'm not Ukrainian, I actually have no direct connection to Ukraine. I don't have relatives here. I knew almost nothing about this country before February of 2022. But I am now celebrated with uh, all other defenders here as being one of Ukrainians' defenders, not just by participating at the front lines, but also educating those that are not able to spend time at the front lines, or educating those that are not able to come to Ukraine at all, about just sharing the experience about what's actually going on here and what the needs are and why these needs are so important. So that's something that I'm very honored to be one of the defenders that gets to be celebrated on a day like today, and see how many local civilians here in Ukraine celebrate, all these different nationalities that are here, not just myself and other fellow Americans, but so many other nationalities that are here that are technically foreigners here in Ukraine, but those that are coming here to help out in one way or another, whether we're fighting or doing humanitarian aid actions, that we all get to be part of this. And the local populace has gone very far out of their way to help us feel very welcome and celebrated during this day, as they share their appreciation for so many nations and nationalities coming to their aid at this dire time.